How to clone an existing VM in Proxmox. For this video, I'd be cloning this Windows 11 VM for the purpose of having two separate instances of this VM. You can watch my previous video on how I built this Windows 11 VM. I'll share the link in the description. We'll start by right-clicking this Windows 11 VM, and we have two options for cloning a VM. Clone and convert to template. I've done some reading that when using the first option, clone, the cloned VM will inherit the same MAC address and IP address from the original VM. We all know that when there is a duplicate IP address or MAC address, this will cause network connectivity issues. For the second option, that is convert to template, this VM will be converted to a template with all the original VM's pre-configured settings and OS. This is a base image or somewhat like a snapshot. Then we can create multiple VMs out of it. As per Proxmox recommendation, creating a template is usually preferred over cloning an existing VM. So we'll go for this option, and then we will see if we are going to run some issues with having a duplicate MAC address or IP address. This is actually my first time of doing this, and we'll see how it goes. I'll shut down this VM first. Right-click back on this Windows 11 VM and select Convert to Template. Select Yes to confirm. If you look at the left corner, we can see the Windows 11 VM that is converted to a template has now a different icon. Going to the hardware section of this template, we have this configuration exactly the same as when I built this Windows 11 VM. This turns out to be now the base configuration. When we right-click, the only option is clone. Once this is converted to a template, it cannot be started anymore. Our only choice here is to go ahead and select clone. In this clone VM template dialog box, the target node is Beelink, no other option here. I will leave the VM ID as it is. I'll name this as Windows 11-2. For resource pool, there's nothing to select here. For mode, we have two options. We can select either link clone or full clone. A full clone is a complete copy and is fully independent from the original VM or VM template, but this requires the same disk space as the original, while a link clone shares the disk with the parent virtual machine, so it requires less disk space. Just keep in mind that a link clone VM cannot be started without the original template. For my use case here, I will select full clone. We have now a new entry called VM103, and this will change to Windows 11-2. Below it is the template. When going to the hardware section of this Windows 11-2 VM, we can review the specifications and everything looks good here. We'll just start this VM then. So far looks alright. The VM started just fine. Going to the device manager, we can see no issues with the driver. Looking at the network icon, we have the internet access. Let's jump in and create a second clone from the template. I'll name this as Windows 11-1, just to follow the naming convention I made from the first cloned VM named Windows 11-2. For mode, we'll select full clone, same as the first cloned VM. As we can see, the VM is locked while it's building the parts to it. When checking the hardware section of this VM, the parts are not complete yet. After a few seconds, we have now the complete parts or specs of this VM. We don't see the lock icon anymore. And we'll go ahead and start the second clone VM. Same as the first cloned VM, it started just fine, and as you can see, it shows the same username. I took a shortcut here and pulled up the network Ethernet properties to view the IP and MAC address. MAC address for this one ends in 3E8C, and the DHCP IP address assigned to it is 192.168.8.114. Now let us compare this to the first cloned VM. After pulling up the network Ethernet properties, the DHCP assigned IP address of 192.168.8.114 is exactly the same as the second cloned VM. Same goes with the MAC address, ending in 3E-8C. So both IP address and MAC address for both cloned VMs are duplicates. I suspect it has something to do with the network interface. In the hardware section of this VM, Intel E1000 is the selected option for network device. But when I installed this first Windows 11 VM, you can watch my video for that. I was stuck in the setup process as it did not detect the LAN interface when it was originally on VirtIO Para Virtualized. So let us switch this to VirtIO Para Virtualized and see if this will fix the issue of having duplicate IP and MAC addresses. Going back to the console, the network icon status shows no internet access, no connections available. When looking at the device manager, we now have a missing driver for Ethernet controller. To fix this, we need to mount back the VirtIO ISO driver to the CD/DVD drive on this VM and update the driver. The mounted ISO is detected on the D drive, as you can see below. We'll right-click on this Ethernet controller and select the D drive to install the driver. After updating the driver successfully, the network icon now shows we have network internet access. We'll just refresh this network Ethernet properties And now we have 192.168.8.117 for the DHCP assigned IP address, and the MAC address ending in 49-96. This is looking good so far. If we now compare this to Windows 11-2 VM, the IP address 192.168.8.114 and the MAC address ending in 3E-8C are not duplicates anymore. However, this VM is still using Intel E1000. We just have to do the same process on this VM by changing the network device from Intel E1000 to VirtIO para Virtualize. Mount the VirtIO ISO file on the CD/DVD drive and update the driver. After updating the driver and refreshing the Ethernet properties, the DHCP assigned IP address now for this Windows 11-2 VM is 192.168.8.118, while for the MAC address it ends in 08-77. Comparing now to Windows 11-1 VM, IP address in here ends in 8.117, while MAC address ends in 49-96. Looks like we fixed the issue of having duplicate IP and MAC addresses. We'll go ahead and shut down both VMs and start this again to confirm. Before I'll start these VMs, I'll edit the Windows 11 template network device settings and change it from Intel E1000 to VirtIO para Virtualized just in case I need to make some clone again. For this Windows 11-1 VM that I started first, IP address in here ends in 8.117 and MAC address ends in 49-96. For Windows 11-2 VM, the IP address ends in 8.118 and MAC address ends in 08-77. We have confirmed both Windows 11 VMs have its own unique IP and MAC addresses. We can remove then the mounted virt ISO file from the CD/DVD drive on both VMs. I wanted to show the overall CPU and memory usage with 4 VMs running. CPU usage is less than 2%, while RAM usage is at 53% or 15 gig out of 28 gig. Each VM here has been allocated 4 gig of memory. We have a total of 4 VMs, namely Windows Server 2022, Kali Linux, this is an easy one to install, and these 2 Windows 11 VMs. I also wanted to show the LVM local storage, about 9.5% usage or 80 gig out of 852 gig. If we look at the distribution of the LVM disks, the top 3 here with the name that starts with base-100-disk 0, 1, and 2 are for the Windows 11 template. The template has its own dedicated LVM disks, UEFI for BIOS, local storage, and TPM. And this will be a shared disk when using that link clone option when cloning a VM. That is all for this video. If you find this helpful, please consider subscribing. For the next video, we'll virtualize pfSense firewall. How can we do that when this Beelink Serve5 model only has one Ethernet port? Watch out for that then. Take care and see you on the next video.